Hello and welcome back to my channel, Flicks with Nick. Today I'm reviewing the new horror thriller, Old.
Hi, Old.
Honestly, I had no idea what to expect before I watched Old. And that is because Old is directed by M. Night Shyamalan. For those that don't know about his career, Shyamalan started as one of Hollywood's biggest, brightest rising stars. He wrote and directed The Sixth Sense and Unbreakable, two absolutely incredible movies that earned Shyamalan 2 Oscar nominations before the age of 30. There was a massive amount of buzz around Shyamalan at this point. The man was even hyped up as the next Steven Spielberg. Shyamalan next made Signs and The Village. Both weren't as universally loved as his previous films, but were still very good movies. At this point, there was no major cause for concern for Shyamalan. Then, after all the massive amounts of hype, M. Night's career fell off a cliff like no one else in Hollywood history. Shyamalan directed Lady in the Water, which won top review called pretentious, humorless, and breathtaking in its absurdity. Shyamalan directed The Happening, a movie so unbelievably bad, I'm still not entirely sure it wasn't supposed to be a comedy. Shyamalan directed The Last Airbender, which is considered the worst adaptation of all time and one of the worst movies of the 21st century. Shyamalan then directed After Earth. At this point, Shyamalan's career had taken such a nosedive, his name was hidden from the movie's posters and trailers due to a fear audiences wouldn't watch a movie if they knew Shyamalan directed it. After 4 terrible movies in a row, it now looked like M. Night's career was finished. But miraculously things rebounded. M. Night directed The Visit and Split, 2 movies that were very positively received by audiences and critics. After a decade of failure, M. Night had a renaissance by returning to his roots, by once again directing low-budget horror movies. I think it's important to tell the story of Shyamalan to better set up an overall context before I review Old. Due to Shyamalan's extremely up and down film history, I had no idea what to expect going into this movie. Would it be another solid horror movie like Split or The Visit? Would it be another absolute train wreck like The Happening or The Last Airbender? Was there any chance M. Night Shyamalan had completely revamped his career and Old was his best movie yet? The answer? No. God no. Old is so bad. Old tells the story of a group of strangers on a mysterious beach that is somehow causing them to age rapidly, reducing their entire lives into a single day. Starting with a few positive notes I do have, I appreciate that Old went big with its ideas. M. Night always does swing for the fences. Good or bad, you can't say his movies aren't creative. Old has a very cool premise. I appreciated the many fascinating wrinkles and complexities of rapid aging that were explored throughout the movie. There are 3 really cool pieces of body horror stemming from the quick aging. The scene in the cave was my favorite in the movie. These transformations were horrific and disgusting to look at. I really wish the movie leaned further into these areas, further into the horror, further into the terrible implications, and really explored every possible angle of this really cool premise. Because aside from those 2 brief positives, the rest of this movie was a mess. The direction was so strange. Different shot choices actively took me out of the movie. It was hard to focus on the story when the camera was pointed at a shoulder or spinning in circles. One shot I legitimately had to look away from the screen because I was actually getting dizzy. Though, even if I was able to focus on the story, there really isn't even a story. Sure, events happen, but there was no sense of purpose or momentum. I'm not getting into spoilers, but if I did, I could summarize what actually happened in 2 sentences. This feels like a Twilight Zone episode that got stretched to 2 hours. There was just not any meat on its bones, and scenes are dragged on and on to fill runtime. Because this was an ensemble movie, no one really got the time to develop any semblance of character. Characters are one note. They're vapid, aggressive, neurotic, childish, and they're never given any development or exploration beyond that one trait. I had no investment in anything or anyone. No character was memorable and no character was likable. This movie was extremely poorly written from top to bottom. The dialogue was so on the nose, it was just funny. Within the first 10 minutes, multiple characters said things like, "Oh, I'd love to hear your singing voice when you're older," or "You're always too worried about growing up," or "Oh, straighten your back, when you're older, boys are gonna be all over you." heavy-handed lines that were forced into the script to bash it over audiences' heads that yes, everyone will be old soon. It's not playful irony if you're spelling it out for us in crayon. There was no subtlety at all, and the rest of the movie was just like this. Characters continually saying the most absurd things to each other, jumping to conclusions for the sake of the plot, and dumping exposition on our heads. Despite everything I've said, as bad as this movie was throughout, I still had high hopes for the ending. Shyamalan is well known for his shocking, memorable twists. I was excited to see what was going to happen. But Old's ending was the worst part of the movie. At the end, there was no twist, no interesting reveal. Exactly what you thought was happening is what was happening. And what made it even worse was the lame ending was 20 minutes too long. It just wouldn't fucking end. I could not believe how long it took to wrap up such a simple concept. Scene after scene after scene after scene, explaining the same thing. Old fades to black at one point. I left to get up, and another scene faded in. I'm trying my best not to exaggerate, but I really cannot remember a more boring, stretched out, disappointing ending to a movie. This ending was like a rotten cherry on the top of an ice cream sundae made from dog shit. Overall, I did not like Old. It was terrible. Based on the trailers, I kind of expected this to be one of M. Night's bad movies, but I did not expect it to be this bad. Do not go see Old. It may not waste 50 years of your life, but it will for sure waste 2 hours. Also, as a quick side note that didn't fit into my overall review, when I went to go see this in theaters, someone honestly brought a 5-year-old and like a 7-year-old to go see this. And like, far be it for me to give anyone parenting advice, but oh my god, do not take your kids to this movie. It is so fucked up in certain scenes. The entire premise of this movie is young kids rapidly aging and having these horrific body changes. One kid gets pregnant and has this terrible birth. Why would you take your kids to this movie? If you want to see something slightly less horrific, just take them to Boss Baby 2.
I'm in the family business, and now you work for me, boomers!
Anyways, those are my thoughts on Old and Kids in movie theaters. If you've seen this movie, please leave a comment down below. I would absolutely love to talk more about this movie in the comments. If you stumbled upon this review, please subscribe to my channel, Flicks with Nick. I post new horror rants, commentaries, and deep dives on Fridays. As well on Mondays, I post quick 1-minute recommendations for horror movies available to watch on Shudder, Netflix, and Amazon Prime. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next week.